Hello, everybody. My name is VanBradley, and the 2 hour Civilization 7 Exploration Age livestream just ended, and it was packed with so much good stuff for us Civ nerds to kind of chew on here. Now, because the internet works in binaries only, I'm going to go over the best and the worst moments. A few caveats as always. These are my personal opinions. The things I loved that are in my best category, you might not have liked. They might be in your worst, and vice versa. So these are my opinions. I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the community or an individual person. That isn't myself. This is just how I feel. Secondly, this was a 2 hour live stream, and the devs were so good at explaining what was going on. There is a likelihood that I misunderstood something or I missed something completely. I was trying to take notes and watch a video and record, and there was a lot going on, so I'll do my best here. The first thing I thought was really well done was the age transition, specifically the point at which the Antiquity Age kind of flipped into being the Exploration Age. Nothing that happened in this age transition was surprising. These are all things we learned about in previous streams or in dev diaries, but seeing it all happen was kind of cool. You're going through your cities, they're growing, you're kind of clicking the growth options, you're assigning your points, the transition animations are coming back and forth. Just the way that age transition worked seemed much more intuitive than I thought it was going to for a pre-release build of the game. It looked like everything was functioning really well, and it got me excited for my age transitions when I play Civ 7. It seemed like a really functional and intuitive process, which I really enjoyed watching. I'm going to skip to the end of the stream, but the next thing I really loved were the fleet commanders. We had already learned about the army commanders on land, being able to pack and unpack units, etc. I mentioned in a previous stream how much I loved the idea of those. We had heard about the fleet commanders, but we saw one in action. Everything about them, just the same as the kind of land army commanders, is so exciting. The ability to pack and unpack ocean units so you can move them around more easily instead of clicking on each of them individually. The way the promotions work, the types of promotions there were, the splash damage thing that Carl designed was awesome. So everything about the fleet commanders got me really excited for the naval combat gameplay and the naval movement in Civilization 7. I really enjoyed getting a better look at the unique civilization policies as they transitioned from age to age. A lot of the policy options were removed. You're in a new age, those policies from the previous era are no longer applicable. You're kind of stuck at the beginning of the new age with the policies that your civilization, or your leader, I suppose, is carrying over. This is really cool because it adds a lot of weight to that first leader decision. These are the policies that I'm going to carry to the beginning of the second era with me, so I got to be able to maximize those. I got to understand them really well, and it just added a little bit of customizability, a little bit of weight to that first decision, and a little bit of continuity. There's a lot of fear, and this is not a fear that I have, but there's a lot of fear and worry that the changing of civilizations will diminish civilization as a game in some capacity and kind of ruin that aspect of standing the test of time with one empire. And these unique policies, at least for me when I saw them, there was only about 4 or 5 on offer, seemed to kind of bridge that gap a little bit and kind of hold that whole process together in a way that I really enjoyed. Learning more about the overbuilding mechanics was also awesome. I really enjoyed watching Carl kind of take these old buildings from the Antiquity Age that are no longer applicable. They're no longer giving you all the yields, right? Like as you switch ages, a lot of the old tech, the old buildings no longer give you the full yield benefit that they did in the previous age when they were relevant. Watching him kind of build over top with something newer, turning a market into a bazaar, turning a library into whatever it is they're starting from and turning it into. Overbuilding on top of those things was awesome. It was also cool to see the types of tiles that cannot be overbuilt. The kind of, what are they called? Not limitless, but the granaries, these buildings that you can build in any age, regardless of whether or not they kind of tech in or out. Like a granary is always available, so you can't overbuild on it. Those types of things I thought were really cool. So learning more about the overbuilding mechanics and how as you transition from age to age, some of your older technology, your older buildings are going to lose the benefit you gained. So you have to build new stuff on top of them, I thought was super cool. The way the artwork also worked with that, we went from a Greek style to a Spanish style, and we didn't get too far into the game to really see it happen, but the way the artwork we did see kind of merge that all together was excellent. Hey everybody, Editing VB here, and I hope you're enjoying the Civ 7 Exploration Age as much as I did. Just a quick reminder that so many of you who watch this channel frequently are not subscribed. What's stopping you? Hit that subscribe button, get yourself ready for more Civ 7 content. We got a lot of other content on the way before the game even releases as well, so if you even think it might be worth your while, hit down below the video, there's a subscribe button, click on that, and let's get back to talking about the Exploration Age. The next observation is more of a broad one, and I think it does help having the whole middle section of the game dedicated to this mechanic specifically, but I enjoyed seeing more detailed naval gameplay and a few optimizations to make the experience better. If you are a fan of Civ 6, you will know that the naval gameplay is not overly deep or interesting. There's not a lot going on unless you are like a naval pillaging Civ. Separately from that, a lot of people just like literally play on a Pangaea map to avoid having to interact with the naval gameplay at all because it's not very interesting or relevant. In this game, it seems like they've put a lot more work into the naval gameplay being important. What we saw wasn't just, sprinting a settler or sprinting one boat across to discover the new continent that you're able to settle. What we saw was having to build a navy, having to kind of defend these areas, having to interact with the naval gameplay in a way that was more interesting, and a few optimizations to make that experience better. Naval units being able to heal outside of your own territory in Civ 6 would go a long way to making that gameplay more interesting. So the overall kind of expansion and detail added to the naval gameplay seems to be a net positive. We won't know until we play enough games, especially with civs that are good at naval gameplay. We'll get to one of my worsts later where I do have some worries about these mechanics, but for now, just the idea that they're focusing more on making this naval gameplay aspect a larger part of the middle age, but also just a more detailed and fun experience overall was really, really nice for me to see. Within that naval gameplay, we learned about treasure fleets, which in Civ 7 are the only unit you can kind of take over from another Civ. These will help you gain, economic victory points by taking a treasure fleet from the foreign. It wasn't the foreign land, they were the distant lands. But taking a treasure fleet from the distant lands, bringing it back to your homeland, and kind of putting the treasure on the land in your kind of home cities. It'll give you points, it'll give you gold, but what's cool is you can kind of take them over, and it felt very piratey to me. So I like that there's this little aspect of piratey gameplay where you can kind of go in, and as the other AI are earning treasure fleets, you can kind of time your navy to declare war on them and steal their treasure fleet and steal their economic victory points. That felt like a really cool opportunity to snowball. Again, I do have some worries about this. I do have some worries about this mechanic. That'll be in the worst section. But for now, just the idea of the treasure fleets existing, the whole piratey aspect of being able to take them or defend them or whatever it is, it all seemed great to me. I enjoyed the treasure fleets a lot. And they looked beautiful. The treasure fleets looked gorgeous. So whoever does the art for the treasure fleets, A+ job, well done. The religion changes also seemed like a relative upgrade over Civilization 6. The religious victory, it's not my favorite. It's a little bit weird and wonky. The fact that not everyone can get a religion has always been very strange to me. And so in Civilization 7, they've taken a different approach. It seems to be more intertwined with the culture victory and how that's going. Everybody gets the opportunity to build the religion and have some beliefs. You also can't lose that religion in your holy city, so at least part of your religion will always be affecting your empire. So if you're not going to focus on your religion as part of your gameplay, you're at least not going to get it stolen from you early on and lose all of those benefits. So all of those quality of life things seem to be good upgrades. It seemed that the belief system worked in a very similar way than Civ 6. So overall, this wasn't the best, and I was like, oh yes, I can't wait for the detail of this religious gameplay. But it was awesome to see that some of the quality of life features that I would have loved in Civ 6 have made their way into Civ 7. It feels like it's part of the game in a way that makes a little more sense than just being its own victory condition, which is awesome. And so all of the religious gameplay we saw, it wasn't transformational. It didn't get me hyped up for it specifically, but I liked that it felt like a more intuitive, more well-balanced, more intentional part of the gameplay experience. Now it's time to get to some of the things I didn't love as much about the gameplay we saw of Civilization, and we are going to start with the Antiquity Age Crisis. Now, this analysis actually starts with a positive that got me really excited. I misunderstood how these crises were going to work. Crises? However you say that, it doesn't matter. I thought it would happen over the age transition. So you get to the end of an age, you transition, and at the beginning of the new age, you're going to start your crisis. That's going to be part of the new age. However, that's not the case at all. It actually starts before the age transition. There's a crisis begins, and then it gets worse, and then it, explodes, whatever it is, there's a crisis going on. So I thought that was cool that it actually started before the age transition. You dealt with it up until the age transition, and then once you flipped, crisis over, crisis complete. There are two aspects, though, that I didn't love quite as much. The first was the actual one that we saw, the barbarians kind of coming and destroying things in your empire. I like the idea that you have to focus militarily on the barbarians, so even if you're not a civ that's building a lot of military units, this is a crisis. There are barbarians coming and they're pillaging and just being a nuisance in your lands. What struck me is, unlike some of the other changes I talked about earlier, it didn't feel perfectly connected. It didn't feel like a crisis that makes a lot of sense. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it just felt a little lackluster, a little bit of like, oh, we want to have a crisis. This could be a crisis. It didn't feel like, oh, we want to have a crisis. So this is the, you know what I mean? And there's 6 different crises, from what they've said, 3 in each era. Now, I don't know if those are the same 3, but up to 6 different ones. And we only saw the one barbarian one, but it felt a little bit uninspired, a little bit like, oh, what could be a crisis? Barbarians. And then we just kill it. Like, it didn't really feel, I don't know. I just like, this is a vibes-based video, and the vibes on the type of crisis were off a little bit. The second thing about the crises, I should have Googled this word, that I didn't love was the crisis policy. So as you're going through a crisis, you have to put in crisis policies that are a negative policy for your empire. Now, I like this. I obviously like the idea that there is a crisis, that negative things will happen to your empire, and you will have to deal with those things. That is a good, intuitive, fun part of the gameplay experience. However, to me, getting to choose, even Ed Beach, when he was doing this gameplay, said, I chose the 2 that were least impactful to my empire. If I just get a list of 6 options and I'm just going through and picking the 2 least worst options, then it just feels like I'm clicking buttons and moving cards. It doesn't feel like I'm immersed in the crisis. You know what I mean? Like, to me, a crisis is there's a flu pandemic, right? There's a pandemic. Maybe we can all relate. There are loads of my citizens that are dying to this pandemic. Now, I have options. I can, as an empire, continue soldiering forward and building libraries and traders or whatever, but more of my citizens will feel the effects of the pandemic. Or I can turn all of my production and my resources into building hospitals or, combating the pandemic or whatever. And that way I'm still getting to choose, right? Like, I'm still making a choice to deal with the crisis in a certain way, but it's just an intuitive part of the experience. Instead of just getting like 6 different pandemic crisis options, like, these are the worst 2. I think I wish the negative effects of the crisis were, there's obviously on the surface the negative effect that barbarians are kind of ravaging your empire, but then there were these unrelated crisis cards that seemed unrelated to the barbarians entirely, where you were just kind of purchasing and using the 2 least worst options, and that felt very clunky to me. It felt bizarre that these things were like a little bit disconnected. It didn't feel, the whole crisis thing didn't feel like a fully fleshed out, well-oiled machine of a system. It kind of felt like the age system, which really seemed well done, was done first, and then somebody at some point in the middle had the idea of like, let's put a crisis there, and they kind of put the crisis on top without integrating it fully. Now, there's a lot of caveats to this. I haven't played it. We haven't seen all the crises. Maybe I'm just misrepresenting or misunderstanding what I saw, but the whole barbarians and the policy card thing seemed to be a little bit, slapdash and put on top of the age transitions instead of something fully integrated that felt real. An example of a game that does these crises really well is Frostpunk and Frostpunk 2. You are constantly given these crises, and you're not really given like too many options to just pick the least worst one. Everything feels really well integrated. Everything feels like you're making a meaningful choice to deal with the crisis in a certain way, and the consequences of that decision will follow. But it doesn't feel like you're choosing the least worst options. You're just choosing different options that are all very much related to the crisis that is happening. And so Frostpunk is a game designed around, the whole thing is a crisis though, so I'm not surprised that feels more fleshed out there, but this crisis system just felt weird-ish to me. Now, the next worst thing is something that only occurred to me as I was watching. The whole conceit of what's happening in this age transition is that you started on one landmass, you've discovered the exploration era, you can get your boats, you can get your settlers, and you're going to the new continent to settle it up. Now, I have some worries about how this will work functionally with civilizations that are not naval based civs that can't do this quite as quickly. So, in the stream, they were playing a naval based civ that gets these boats nice and early, that can get on the oceans nice and early, and can get to the other continent a little more quickly when they're with their abilities. Now, this comes as a trade off, right? The other civs will have military abilities or science abilities. But because everyone needs to get to this other continent, or at least is incentivized to do it, I just had some balance questions around how that practically would work. In the live stream, we saw that Spain kind of moved from the coast to these little islands that were interconnected, right? And then from those islands to another continent. So if there's 4 civs in the game and they all want to settle on the other continent, I just want to know, like, what is stopping Isabella from just like setting up an outpost, taking a lot of the land because she can do it first, and then from there transitioning into, a different, more domestic strategy. I just worry a little bit that there'll be some civs that are so good at this that they'll just go and take all the land away. And then the other civs, even if they got there as quickly as they can, can't possibly interact properly with the gameplay mechanics of the other continent. Now, this is a worry that was not based on the gameplay we watched. That was not a problem that I saw happen. It was just a balance thing that as I was watching this, I went, oh, so the strategy here is clearly just get your boats on the water, settle the other continent, block the other civs from being able to do that, and you'll have a much easier win because you're blocking off a half of the whole map from these other civs. So there's like most things in Civ, there's an element of balance in gameplay. You obviously don't want to like reserve land for every civ. That's really dumb as well. But I do just have some concerns about how practically the exploration age would work to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to interact with it, kind of regardless of their civ's inherent abilities. Now, to be fair to Firaxis, they showed off what civs might look like if they're not great at just getting to the other continents quickly. There was one civ we watched where they had an ability where once the age transitioned, if they started like taking your cities on the home continent, they would get victory points towards the military victory condition or something like that, which I thought was really interesting. So this guy, he's like waiting for you to hop on your ships and go somewhere else so he can just build a cavalry army and kill all your cities. And so there was a showcase of a way in which the game is balanced around that. However, it's just a more broad general concern to have this one inflection point in the game that some civs are just better at exploiting than others, and I worry about the balance there. Those were really my only 2 or 3 kind of big concerns kind of coming out of this live stream. I broadly really loved it. I thought it was a near flawless showcase of Civilization 7. These streams are designed to hype me up, right? They want me to come in there, watch for 2 hours, and be more excited to play Civ than I was before I started, and that is exactly how I feel right now. I left that live stream and you know what? Mostly everything I saw here looked and felt amazing, and I can't wait to play Civ 7. Shouts to the art department. I'll say it every video as long as it keeps improving. Everything looked better than it did the last stream. This is obviously a work in progress build, and there were some bugs about the naval combat that I thought were pretty funny. And so everything looking a little better. The resource icons still look awful to me. I don't know why they look so distinctly worse than everything else. But the thing that I noticed this time was the fidelity of the deep ocean tiles looked incredible. And so I'm really excited for the artwork of Civ 7. It was nice to see Carl back on stream. This was the most well-executed live stream from a staffing perspective. You had the community manager dealing with a lot of the community things and kind of keeping things on time and all schedule. You had Ed Beach to kind of give a broad overview of everything that was happening in the game, and then you had Carl to kind of play the game and explain what he was doing on a turn-by-turn basis. This stream felt a lot less cluttered than the other ones. There wasn't too many people talking over each other. There wasn't too many people trying to get like, oh, I'm the art person, so let's talk about the art, or I'm the gameplay person, so let's talk about the gameplay. It was nice to have a more focused gameplay stream, and then next time maybe we can have a more focused artwork stream, and it just felt better as someone who's watching these streams for information to have, a much better production. So I really, really enjoyed that. That'll be the end of this video for now. The key here is for you to let me know what you thought about the Exploration Age gameplay live stream. Let me know in the comments below. If you want to head down to the description, there are loads of places you can subscribe or follow. We got a Twitch stream, we got a YouTube, we got everything down there, so go check it out. If you want a cool t-shirt like this or a cool beanie like this, make sure you look how sexy that beanie is. Make sure you head to vbmerch.com and pick up your VB merch today. Like 6 or 7 of you made an order last week and it just made my heart melt. I was so excited. So if you want to go do that, that would be awesome. Thank you all so much for watching. I cannot wait for Civilization 7. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.